who buys it. And that's what makes estimating the impact of tourism different than, government sources have, statistics for how much economic activity is produced by manufacturing or cars or leather or all kinds of other business segments. But in our business, we're trying to measure what visitors bought. And so that's a piece of retail, and it's a piece of food and beverage. And so, why do we do this study? Well, it provides a directional understanding of how we're doing and, what the total flows are. This doesn't measure the output of hotels specifically or retail specifically. It's for the visitors that we aim to attract to this community, how much spending, and then how much total economic impact is there. This is pretty dense, but this is just talking about methods and data sources. Smith Travel Research, tax data, visitor profiles. One of the inputs for this is a national study by Longwoods that is a representative study of all the trips taken in America, in the United States. And then they have sample for people who's reported visiting Asheville, North Carolina, and Buncombe County. In-plan is something the Chamber uses as a very standard economic development tool and model. And then, of course, they're using wage data from available public sources. So a little bit about tourism economics. The company that produces this study for us, this is a standard methodology that's applied exactly the same in every community they are commissioned to by, which is right now over 100 destinations. Tourism Economics is headquartered in Philadelphia, and their division of Oxford Economics. Okay, any questions on background? All right, on to some headline results. Most of these numbers are things that have been out there and we use in summary data all of the time, but I thought I would show you the actual source data so you could see the level of detail that's available in case that is interesting to you. But the headline results, of course, everyone here understands that tourism is an integral part of the regional economy. Visitors spend $2 billion a year with local businesses, and then when we take into account those indirect and induced effects, it totals an impact of $3.1 billion of business sales in Buncombe County. That generates $368 million of tax revenues. That includes about $200 million in state and local tax revenues. I'm going to skip over this a little bit because we're going to get into this in more detail. So key trends. So just wanted you to see that the report gives us the trend line back to 2013. We started commissioning this, I think, for 2012 year, received the report in 2013 possibly. Does that sound right, Marla? And so it estimates, the job of the TDA is to attract overnight visitors to Buncombe County. But in order to understand the total economic impact of tourism in general, we also have to understand and estimate the number of day visitors. As a regional economic hub, Buncombe County is receiving visitors who are coming just for the day for so many different kinds of reasons. We're a hub for regional shopping, for sporting events, for kids who are playing in tournaments, for appointments at Mission Hospital and different doctors. And so there are lots and lots of different reasons that people come into Buncombe County without an overnight stay. And they're contributing to this visitor spending number also. But you can see in terms of visitor spending, so we're estimating 3.9 million overnight visitors and about a little over 7 million day visitors, but the overnight is what's driving the spend. So we're at $1.4 billion in spending by overnight visitors, and day visitors are contributing spending of about $623 million. So you can, so this part of the chart is showing you the change year over year, and so in 2017, we had a 3% change in overnight visitation and a similar amount in day visitation, but visitor spending continued to grow at a pace beyond the number of people the growth in the number of people at almost 5% for overnight visitor spending and 3.6% for day spending.
Stephanie, what's the spend for a paid tourist versus
have that in the visitor profile, but I don't want to quote it to you off the top of my head. So this is really just reiterating some data from other sources. Obviously we have, this community has had a big increase in the number of rooms available for overnight stays, both in the short-term rental category and also in the hotel category. And so one of our challenges is to keep up with the number of overnight visitors to fill those new rooms in all of those categories. In 2017, room supply expanded 4.7%, and they're talking in this specifically from the Smith Travel Research data for hotels, and room demand grew by 3.7%. And I'll note that 3.7% is over the historical average, although it fell short of the total room demand increase. And also use of non-hotel lodging continues to expand, and that is noted here. That's incredible. So in the parentheses, we're showing that as a share of the total, short-term rentals grew to almost 15%, up from 8% the year before. This chart talks about employment. I think tourism has contributed significantly to Buncombe County's status as the lowest unemployment rate in North Carolina. It's not reported in this data, but we've had data from the North Carolina Department of Commerce that shows that tourism and hospitality sector jobs pay more than the North Carolina average, and are really the only contributing sectors that have above average wages in this community. So moving on to visitor details and spending characteristics. As I mentioned before, we hear that 11 million visitors sound like such a big scary number. And when we do the math, Buncombe County actually commissioned a little study of how many, what percentage of people are from workshed residents and visitors. And so if we take 7 million people times 1 day and 3.9 million overnight visitors times about 3 days, the share of the number of people who are actually in Buncombe County as a visitor is about 14%. It just helps to put that into context. Oh, here we go. So average daily spend for overnight visitors was $121 compared to $86 for day visitors. And I think the average length of stay for visitors increased in 2017 to about 3, up from 2.5 the year before. Well, so this data source includes people who spent nothing. And so you've got to remember that visiting friends and relatives is about a third. And so you have 0 acting in there. Does that work? Okay, good.
I was wondering.
I thought there might be people staying on Joe's code book.
Yeah. Joe, stop letting those people stay for free. So, one thing that is surprising, I think, in to people is that, although lodging establishments are collecting 100% of the money that is used for promotion to bring visitors to the community, lodging establishments are receiving about 23% of the direct visitor spending. And then when we looked at the total economic impact, it goes down to about 14% of the total spend. So we can see here, and you can see in your infographic, that food and beverage establishments are the primary beneficiaries from visitor spending at 28% of all direct spend. Retail is next at is almost equal to lodging at 23%. Recreation includes recreation and entertainment and really kind of everything that people do. So attractions would be in this category. And then transportation comes in at about 12%. And then the model takes really only the part of transportation that stays local. So if somebody flies in from California and their ticket revenue stays with American Airlines, then that is not included in the transportation revenues that are attributed to visitor spending. This is about fuel prices. That transportation is really driven by fuel prices, and we can see, as time goes on, that fuel prices kind of contribute to points of increase and decrease in total spending. So this is where it gets more interesting. We can The study shows us how direct spending by category changes. This study also differs from the study that's done by U.S. Travel because it has an estimate for the economic value of second homes and the impact that that makes on the local economy. We're very transparent about, you know, what that estimate is. That's really important in a lot of communities, and you know, to want to understand that dynamic. And so you can see here what the relative impact is. But we're showing here the growth rates from 2016 to 2017 by industry sector. Kind of getting into more, and so in these next series of charts, the direct impacts, so these are cash register sales, are in the first column. The indirect, or the business-to-business impacts, are second, and the induced, the effects of employment spending, are in the third column. So now we're seeing how, so we're seeing in the first column, these are the places where visitors spend their money, and then we're seeing in the second column that literally every type of business in Buncombe County is benefiting from visitor spending. And we're seeing how relative to that. So one of the things that I hear a lot, that you kind of hear like, well, the real jobs, are kind of considered banking and insurance and those professional services. And if we combine, so these businesses buy goods and services from these businesses, but it all started as visitor money. And so you can see that when we combine finance, insurance, real estate, and business services, the total benefit from visitor spending is actually greater to that sector than it is for lodging. Does that make sense? So if you relate this to this, the first column is this, the direct spend. This bar represents the indirect and induced combined. Okay. This is kind of showing graphically, the relative impact by industry. So we can see that for food and beverage, most of that's direct sales. So most of the impact for food and beverage is coming from the visitor taking their credit card out and paying directly. You can see for, just as I just said, insurance, real estate, and finance, most of the benefit is coming through business-to-business sales.
Are hotel food and beverage sales included in food and beverage?
Yes.
So they're driving that number too.
Mm-hmm. So this shows the tourism employment intensity by industry. So this is showing us, and I talked to them about, well, can we kind of say that employment is sort of a proxy for sales? So this helps us understand, how much of a sector's employment is based on the visitor spend versus the local economy support for that industry sector. So lodging, unsurprisingly, is almost 100% visitor based. This isn't true everywhere. In my former role in Alexandria, Virginia, there's a lot more local use and government use of meeting space in hotels, and so even though it seems like everywhere, all lodging revenue would be from visitors, it's not true to this extent everywhere. So we're seeing for recreation, which, as I said before, includes attractions and all kinds of entertainment, about half is attributed to visitors. Food and beverage also is about half. So obviously, different parts of town, this is going to be different. I would suspect that, for downtown Asheville, it's possible that larger than half of revenue for restaurants would be attributed to visitor spending. For retail, it's 16.5%. And so about 80% of, all of the retail spending is coming from the local economy versus half for recreation and food and beverage. And so in total, visitors are supporting about 15% of our total economy. Good. I won't go into this in tons of detail. This is showing you the breakdown. About more than 27,000 jobs are ultimately supported by the money that visitors spend. In Buncombe County, 18,000 of those jobs are in those businesses that have direct spending from visitors. And they didn't really talk about it in the methodology so much, but just in really broad, very simplistic terms, the methodology is taking account for, what percentage of the visitor's spending is represented in that business total. And so let's say for your business, it's 15%. Well, then 15% of your employment, 15% of your property taxes are going to be attributed to that visitor spend. This is kind of similar, just showing what share of employment is attributed to direct, indirect, and induced. Then we get into the details of labor income. One thing I'd point out in this chart is that economic impact, when it's measuring income, includes part-time work, and it does not weight the data for part-time work. And so, industry sectors that use a lot of part-time workers see a real deflation in their average weekly wage as a function of not only the hourly wage that's paid, but the number of hours that get worked. This is the kind of estimation of where the taxes go, and I know Julie's been really interested in this. And so, we know how much visitors spend in different categories. We know what the tax rates are for those different categories, and then we know the allocation of those different taxes to different government municipal units. And so that's how these numbers are estimated. And so about $200 million of the $368 million is retained in state and local revenues. But some of the taxes that are paid as a function of tourism are received on a federal level. And so this shows the breakdown of receipts. So we can see that locally, the visitor spending is generating about $63 million of tax revenue that's on a county level, and about $28 million that's on a city of Asheville level. And you can see that that's primarily through a function of property tax. So if we kind of compare the size of the tourism industry, of course, we're kind of taking pieces of different industries and attributing it to visitor spending. You can see that jobs, the number one job generator is healthcare, followed by retail, and then tourism would be third. Okay, so that's the data set. You can vote later whether you like the 34-page report or the one-pager. Are there any questions? So, there's always a variety of statistics and numbers that are in the community, and I just wanted you to have a better appreciation for the origin of this, how they're estimated and what they mean. That doesn't mean that other statistics, like the statistic the city cites on the amount of property tax that's paid by hotels, that's another number that's important to know. Also, there are lots of other kind of indicators that are important to the whole conversation.
I'll just say thanks. More data is always very helpful in explanations. And to the point, or the kind of the question that my frustration expressed at the last meeting, I just want to let folks know that we do have a meeting on the calendar between city staff and Jim and Stephanie to sort of talk about these different numbers, and can we sort of get to a set of numbers that we're all saying, so that it doesn't feel like we're talking at each other, that we're actually talking with each other. So that's at the end of February.
So everybody's feeling the data mojo and
Heavy sigh. Deep breath.
That concludes the fun story.
That was the fun. I'm sure Dent can do much better in terms of fun.
Stephanie, full report is posted somewhere?
Yeah, on exploreashevillec.com in the research section, you can find all of our. Woohoo! Dump's got bling.
All right.
A little bit. First of all, I'd like, on behalf of the Sports Commission, I'd like to thank you again. We can't say thank you enough for all that this board and the city and the county do to support the Sports Commission. And over the past 2 weeks, we received 2 awards. And so in Atlanta at the USTA meetings 2 weekends ago, we received the USTA Southern meetings. We received the special tennis event of the year for the Southern region, so that's the glass one, and you can pass those around if you want to. And then last weekend we won, in Pinehurst, we won the USATA North Carolina special event of the year, and both of those were for Fed Cup last year. But this is not just a Sports Commission award. This is a team award. It's an award for Explore Asheville and for the U.S. Cellular Center, because without each of us coming together as a very strong team, we would not have won these awards, and we would not be hosting Fed Cup again so soon. In your packets, we did give you some updated economic impact of just some of the events. You can look at those. Mainly it's the Great Smoky Mountain Grapple and Gaelic Gymnastics. One of the things is now the Destination International software that we've been using all along out of the sales office is now the official software that the National Association of Sports Commissions uses. So we're fortunate to be able to have that, and it now coincides with the national body. Previously, there have been a little bit conflicting data between the two different states. Overall, just going backwards a little bit, the Grapple, which was our wrestling tournament, in the second year, we went from 12 varsity teams to 23. Our JV and youth participation was way up. We switched to a 2-day format, and so our paid spectators tripled this year. The great thing about this event is it really focuses on our health and wellness mission that we have from the Sports Commission in our mission statement. And all the 23 teams, Asheville High School and all of the Buncombe County high schools except Owen participated. And that allows their families to stay home on that weekend before Christmas and participate here instead of traveling to Raleigh, Charlotte. There's a big one in Chapel Hill, and we pulled a couple of teams from there. So, in addition to that, we drew teams from North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia to fill out that field. So we anticipate that it will grow even more. I talked with one of the coaches from Newton Conover, who is the top-ranked 2A team right now in the state of North Carolina, and his comment was he's already committed for next year, and he's going to be recruiting teams to come. So our goal is 32, 36 varsity teams, and then we'll kind of max it out and just continue to do our best. But that's great because it really does focus on our local community. Gaelic Gymnastics, 8 years ago, 75 kids at Kimmel Arena, or 75 gymnasts at Kimmel Arena. This year they had 1,427, I think was the number, on 2 setups at the U.S. Cellular Center. Again, a great partnership with the U.S. Cellular Center to bring in gala, and the best part about that is it's that first weekend in January. So we're off for Christmas, and then all of a sudden we're bringing in over 1,400 gymnasts for that first weekend. So it's great for our community. SoCon planning continues, even though we're going in full Fed Cup mode. But if you look at any of the rankings, the top 4 teams in the SoCon are probably the strongest, most competitive they've been in years nationally. And actually since Davidson and App changed conferences. So if you've not renewed your sponsorship, and you've gotten a call from the sponsorship committee, please jump on board there, or if you need to buy some tickets for your business. Also, we are doing the Hometown Heroes on Monday night, where we'll recognize the city and county, anyone in our public service segment at the government level, fire, police, but also we're going to reach out to our federal workers who have been affected by the embargo. So anyway, so that leads me to what you really want to know. So here it is. Fed Cup. Our team will consist of Nicole Melachar, who is actually the youngest ranked player, and she is ranked 18th in doubles. It will include Danielle Rose Collins, 23rd ranked player, and she also was in the semifinals of the Australian Open last weekend. Madison Keys, number 17th ranked player, and Sophia Keenan, is that how you say that, Chris? Who's the 36th ranked player. Not only will it be covered live on the Tennis Channel, but WLOS is actually going to cover the event live also. So, and it will, anticipated start times are 1 p.m. each day. I encourage you to be in your seats by 12:30 because they do a really good job at the pregame production. T.C. Robertson, color guard will be participating, and also UNCG Pep Band will also be a new aspect that's added this year. So it's pretty exciting. Our work just continues. Right now, we have a driver's meeting for transportation tomorrow night, and then we start picking up teams and people on Saturday. So it gets kind of crazy. With the announcement of the teams, which is being made shortly, or has been, yeah. Anyway, you guys have already got it. It's already been tweeted. So there will also be 150 tickets that are released today. So, and that after that, we're done, and which is great. And those are actually seats that we're able to work with the setup to gain those seats. So again, 2 sellouts, Nashville, pretty good. There are still lots of opportunities to volunteer. So if you've not signed up to volunteer, we desperately, we need additional volunteers for our youth outreach events, which are Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, Friday morning. That's where we're having the hardest time getting individuals to come in. And the reason I'm not saying we're having the hardest time, we need to double the number of volunteers because last year our outreach programs had probably about 500 people in attendance, 500 children. This year we're going to exceed 1,000. So when you look at what this event really means, we get all this exposure, but the thing that it does for our community is it allows over 1,000 children to have the access to a special event. On Wednesday morning, the Buncombe County schools will be coming in. There'll be 2 schools who, on the 4th grade level, won an essay competition. So we really tied this into, they had to write about something about Australia or the Australian team or an Australian team member, which they didn't know. But so it's really a great program that we've had with the county school system. So we'll have those, there are 4 shifts of those coming in on Wednesday. On Thursday, we have some of our private schools and some homeschoolers. And then on Friday morning, all of the 4th graders from Asheville City Schools will come over to the U.S. Cellular Center for a clinic. So they'll get t-shirts, they'll get free lunch, all this kind of really good stuff. And we really need to say thanks to our local sponsors who have stepped up. Ingalls and Mission have really stepped up. Chris, who's the third one I'm missing?
New Belgium, Mercedes-Benz of Asheville, and Explore Asheville.
Okay, so I missed 3. We can't take Explore Asheville for granted, right? Sorry. And then, of course, everything kind of starts off on Thursday night. We have our dinner, and then on Friday we will have the draw ceremony. That time confirmed yet? Lunch time? Noon at the U.S. Cellular Center in the Jan Davis lobby. And then Saturday and Sunday we also have what's called Net Generation Outreach, which is really reaching out to our minority communities throughout the state to expose them to the school districts. So, and then of course we've got a couple of matches in there. So it's all really exciting. And again, I can't thank you guys enough because without your leadership and your vision, we would not be able to go after these events and bring these events to Asheville, and especially to Chris for the incredible job that he and his team do to put these on. So, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
I'll get the blanket. I'll find up on my show.
They threatened to put the bagels on it.
He doesn't play the So, Julie Mayfield.
Yes. We've only had one council meeting since our last meeting, so I don't have a lot to update. I think I mentioned this before in my last update, but it's taken one more step, which is that regarding the pit of despair or circle of hope or whatever it is that we're calling it now. The council did vote to request the city manager find money in the budget in this fiscal year to at least start the planning process for what happens in that space. So she will come back to us hopefully with a plan for that. And then Himanshu just asked me if I have an update on the JBL fields, and the answer is not really. They're still broken, and we're still waiting for new bids from the contractor. So, you know, it seems like every time we get close, then it floods again, and then there's more damage. We are, last I knew, there's about $100,000 gap. There was about $100,000 gap between sort of fixing all the fields and the money available. So what the city has put in, what ABYSA is able to put in, the city's insurance company denied part of the claim, so that's the $100,000 short. And so the contractor is trying to adjust the scope of work to see what that means. And you know, what I said here a couple of months ago, I think, was that, you know, council had kind of, well, at least the finance committee, which is three of us, had said, you know, we're not really prepared to keep investing $1 million every year every time the fields flood. And I think what we've learned since then is that there maybe were things that could have happened before the storms and things that could have happened more quickly after the storms that could have mitigated some of the damage. That information has come to us a little bit pretty recently, and so I think I'm not sure that we had the full picture when we sort of made that declaration, and so I've indicated that, you know, if that is true, then, you know, I would certainly be open to re-examining that decision about the city's continued investment in JBL, and you know, if we can get in place those things that we would need to do before or after a storm. And I think a lot of this has to do with bringing a lot of the maintenance in-house rather than having to go outside to a contractor every single time. Then, you know, we wouldn't really be looking at that amount of money. So, I mean, it's an important asset. It obviously is important in the community here. And so that's just where I am. I haven't actually asked any of my other council members about that, but hopefully a different kind of proposal will come to us.
Do we know if we have the same amount of tournaments coming in this year for soccer, or do we have an indication of that by chance?
So I think we have, so everything was scheduled as planned.
Okay.
And so the Riverside actually will start next weekend. They are having to use basically all of the high schools that they can find. So of course, that does create additional expense for rental, but it also creates additional expense for staffing. I know at the Labor Day, or not Labor Day, in the fall tournament, Mike put 250 miles on his truck in one day, going from site to site, taking lunches and making sure everything was going on. There is potential, depending on how quickly, and I know that it changes kind of every day. There are little wrinkles in terms of that contract and getting that contract. As quickly as we can, we're almost to the point where Michael may have to release the Kepner Cup, which is in May, and it's a state event, and we may have to release it back to the state and ask them to find another city. If we cannot get to a point where we can guarantee that we have the facilities up and running, because they will not go to multiple venues. So,
Oh, they won't?
they,
And I
They
think
won't.
it's also just, I mean, we don't want to leave anybody with the impression that using these disparate multiple fields is something that can continue to happen. You know, not only because of the expense, but I think, you know, because of the excellent reputation of ABYSA, you know, the tournaments that have kind of stuck to the plan to come to Asheville have, you know, really just done it for this one time. And nobody anticipates that that will happen into the future.
So one of the things that happens in soccer, and Mike's done a really good job, is reciprocal agreements. So what will happen is Mike will get commitments from maybe Richmond, Strikers, or Raleigh or Charlotte, to come and bring their teams to our tournament, and in return, ABYSA will actually go to tournaments in those other cities. So it's really important with this reciprocal agreement that we have the best venues possible. And everybody is working with us. A lot of people go through this because there are a lot of soccer fields that are built on riverbeds. I mean, I drove past BB&T soccer complex on 40 the same time as our major flood, and they had the same issue. It's just, they're privately owned, so it was easier for them to take care of that. So we appreciate all the work that the City Council is doing on that. And also, Julie, I forgot to thank you for your work on having February 4th named Celebrate Tennis Week in Asheville. So Julie spearheaded that, got that proclamation, got taken care of, and it was presented last week. So thank you.
How many fields are over there?
4.
Anything the county can do, Joe? It's $100,000.
Well, I mean,
come on.
this is a much bigger discussion than we
Right.
have time with it, and I got some things rolling around in my mind, and at some point in time, the city's gonna have to decide, do they want them there? Can they afford them there? Do they convert it to something else? Do you find another place to build these? How do you do that? I mean, it's not something that we're gonna wave a wand and go away. So I just want to know the number of of fields, and I'm just kind of thinking in what county assets we have that might be able to help.
Well, and I will say thank you also to the county who has allowed the use of Buncombe County Sports Park while this is going on for practice and all of those. The bad thing is those are grass fields, and
It's getting ready to change.
well, only three, which
Only 3?
then adds
Are you
to our
sure?
inventory. Well,
Are you
unless
sure?
you got
And they're not in a floodplain, I hope.
no, they're not.
No, they're not. Once
They're
you
There's no
on a
lights.
grass field,
The
sometimes you
inlets
have
were
grading
there
issues.
for flood mitigation also, correct?
What's that?
Weren't the,
JBL?
yes. I mean,
Oh, that's
so I understand there's some work that's also being done on looking at the riverbed in order to lessen that need for flood mitigation.
Yeah, so there's one, out of the years of looking at this in the wake of the 2004 flooding in Biltmore Village, is that right? There's there was the Azalea Dam project right up there at the fields, and then there's a project that will happen in Biltmore Village right next to Zoe's Kitchen, whatever that's called, anyway, there's a project there that they're gonna
Dredge.
do. Yeah, it's
Kinda.
I mean, it's pretty small. Frankly, they couldn't, for a variety of reasons, and we don't know all those reasons, we just know that of the multiple options that they looked at for flood mitigation projects, starting way out at Warren Wilson and, way upstream, this was the one that ended up making sense.
And I think one of the other things to, and I think some of this is the information that's been provided, is that I've been out for each event to look at stuff with Mike. And the first flood was just totally different because it was just a huge force of water. You had everything coming off of Mount Mitchell, and it was just, and so that flood actually took a straight line and just, the river just went straight across the soccer complex. For all of these additional floods, it's more of what's backed up from the dam,
Yeah, if you don't get it
and then coming in more from the side. So it's the river actually rising and just coming over, and so it's not as extensive as that first one was, just a major straight line force of water. So.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks, Joe.
Joseph?
Okay, well, I got a few things. This past week, we had a ribbon cutting at the new Buncombe County Schools aquatic facility. It was, the ribbon cutting was amazing. Seeing the kids, amazing. If you've ever been to the Zorner pool, you know, and come and see this one, it's just a mini Olympic pool. It's amazing. So the ribbon was cut on that. And announcement was made on a program to use the facility to help drown-proof all the children, you know, in Buncombe County under a certain age, just to, you know, thinking in that direction and working on some programs for that, which I was pretty excited about. We just received a $1.3 million grant to change the name of the bridge to Nowhere, to the bridge to Buncombe. So it's going to connect to 100 jobs that are average of over $19 an hour, and all the jobs are over the calculated living wage. So we're really excited about that, and we're also working on grants for that road. Will also connect to the school and to the new fire station in Eco. And we met yesterday on the Buncombe County Sports Park and moving all that forward. So, you know, that's really exciting. But that was a really big call we got from NCDOT. It's been a few years of, they had assessed a certain dollar amount, and it was pitiful. Honestly, it was $250,000. And we just kept on them and kept on them and kept on them. When HOCON come, we were able to resubmit and recalculate, and we're able to get $1.3 million plus some other grants that we haven't got that haven't been awarded that we expect to know in April on those. And we're very optimistic on those also. So it's very positive for the county and for that community. Also, we're working on three different funding models in Buncombe County. One will present next Tuesday at a meeting, and it's on affordable housing. And it's rather than just reacting to, you know, times of the year and asking for money, we're going to present a model that we think will help county. And also, we're working on and making very good progress on two funding models. One is for to AB Tech to make sure that they receive everything that they need when they need it, and the same with Buncombe County Schools and Asheville City Schools. Rather than coming in every year asking for a certain amount of money, it being we don't really know, you know, what that amount is. We met with them with both with city schools, county schools, you know, AB Tech, in trying to make sure that that's more of a, we have a grip on the policy. We know how much it's going to be, and there's guarantees there for them, so that there's not that worry or concern. The final thing, pretty big news. If you want to come next Tuesday, we're voting on a new county manager, and it's an extensive process, national search. We've narrowed it down. We've met multiple times. And we're very excited. I'm excited about the choice.
Joe, will the new manager be present on
Yes.
Tuesday?
So we will be voting at that time. So.
Will there be any kind of public reception or anything after the vote? So people can
I'd say
meet
it'll
the
be
person?
sometime, either
Well, I meant that night.
before or after, or
Okay.
there'll be opportunities at the next meeting too. So, yeah, we expect it to go well. So,
That's great.
it is. Y'all know that. And we're very pleased with Don Warren. He was a result of a national search, and he's a pretty funny guy too, which is pretty cool.
No way.
With somebody that does numbers. I don't know if y'all noticed that or not.
Don, do you feel the same way, or too early to tell?
I keep my opinions regarding elected officials to myself.
So I think that's all we've got. There's a lot of exciting things. We're hopeful that any negative that's out there soon comes to an end. So and the county's recovered a lot, and we're going to be made whole on that situation, we believe, from a dollar standpoint. But we're putting all that behind us. Tremendous programs are in place. We have fixed the things that are broken, and we're putting people in place, and the culture is changing. You can feel it changing, and I'm pretty excited about it. So that's what we got.
Thanks, Joe. One piece of miscellaneous business, I really want to extend a warm welcome to Tom Ruff, our newest board member here. Tom's a senior leader at Biltmore. He's got a really busy job, has a lot of experience, and we look forward to taking advantage of that experience. It's a real asset to the board, and we appreciate him taking time out of his busy schedule to play with us on a monthly basis. Kit, any comments?
One thing I'd ask, we're in the midst of still working on a community-wide vision for Asheville and Buncombe County 20 years into the future. And we'd really appreciate if you go to avlgreater.org and take the survey there and share it with others, because we want to have a broad cross-section of the community that is weighed in. We're going to use those results to then refine and develop the next economic strategic plan, the next iteration of ABL 5x5. So I'd welcome everybody to take the survey, avlgreater.org. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Kit. Any comments from the general public?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to address the board. My name is Jim Tolbert, and this is Steffi Roush. I talked to you 2.5 years ago in May of 2016 about climate change and climate change policy, and really just wanted to give an update that I thought was relevant to the work you're doing. So in the last 2.5 years, one thing that has changed, aside from a couple of elections in D.C., is there is a bipartisan bill in front of Congress in D.C. with Republican and Democratic co-sponsors to put a price on carbon emissions and have all that fee go back to people in the United States. And I want to talk to you about it for two reasons. One is because I think the impacts of climate change are very real and are something that impact the tourist industry in Buncombe County. You've already talked about it with flooding. We've just seen rather minor flooding. If you look at the fact that North Carolina downstate has seen 2 1,000-year storms since I last spoke to you, you can see the potential impact if any of those storms would have taken a little different track. And we know now we're outside of the historic norms and the historic averages. You can also look to the economic impact in Sevier County over in Tennessee, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge. After a severely dry season when the fires came over there, we had some smoke over here that might have scared some people away. There they had a much harder time bringing people back after people heard of what the fires had done. Those changes in the climate do impact the tourist economy here. But the more important reason I'd like to address climate change to you is that I kind of have a presumption that over the next 5 years we will have mitigation policy put in place. And I'd let you speak to the experts at NOAA and KICS and NEMAC about the climate change piece. Looking at the policy, not all policies are created equal. Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividends Act that has Republicans and Democratic co-sponsors right now in the House, puts a price on carbon and gives all of that money back to people in the United States. So it is very efficient at driving down carbon emissions, but it also helps the economy stay whole by covering those inflationary costs for people. So it keeps money in the economy, it keeps the economy healthy. That I think is critical to continuing to drive people on vacations. People will continue to have vacations, and I think it is from a supporting tourism here, a very sound policy to maintaining a whole economy. I think it also really well supports a driving economy, a driving transportation for our overnight stays. When you look at our overnight stays here, the data you've collected suggests that the 6 states of origin are all within driving distance. Also, 10 of your 11 metro areas with your highest points of origin are all within driving distance. I think when you look to the future, the changes in transportation costs will support making sure you continue to support driving destinations, which is a key part of what we're doing right now. I'd also point you to if you don't follow climate policy, which I don't expect any of you do very much, it's not your business. There was aside from having a bill introduced in the House last week, 2 weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal, 45 leading economists came out in support of a policy description that parallels the bill that's in the House, and that includes both Republican-leaning and Democratic-leaning economists. If you can say they lean one way, it includes the chairs of the President's Council of Economic Advisors from Presidents Ford, President Reagan, President George H.W. Bush, President Clinton, President George W. Bush, and President Obama. So this is a broad bipartisan support from leading economists and Nobel laureates in economics that support this policy. So I would just encourage you to keep, as you talk about the floodings in the fields and the damage that occurs from relatively minor flooding, keep climate change on your radar. Make sure that you're evaluating if you think that the Buncombe County Tourist Development Authority should have a position on it. I would encourage you to look at the bill, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividends Act that Steffi passed out a piece on, and be happy to engage with any of you on how to have your voice heard in the discussion that's going on at a national level on what a sound economic policy to address climate change looks like.
I'll just add that Council several months ago adopted a resolution in support of this framework.
Great, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come here and keep us informed.
Yeah.
Tina.
Hi, Tina Kinsey with Asheville Regional Airport, and just wanted to briefly in this public setting make sure everybody knows that the airport is growing again. We announced yesterday that American Airlines is expanding their nonstop to Dallas to daily nonstop service. That starts on May 3rd. But I did also want to express gratitude to the Explore Asheville CVB and TDA, a very important partner in the efforts as we continue to grow the momentum together in our region and community. So thank you.
Thanks, Tina. Chris?
I'm going to just throw one thing out after the climate change conversation. Come to our house on April 1st for an entertaining situation with Bill Nye talking about extreme weather and climate change. So, just going to put my plug in just for fun. Shameless. That's right.
You would never have done such a thing.
Never. Okay. Anything else? Then the meeting is adjourned.